The cop stepped onto my porch, glanced at my wife, and his pen hit the concrete. His hand went to his hat like muscle memory from 100 court days, eyes wide, voice cracking. "Wait. Judge, you live here." Across the walkway, the HOA president, who had swaggered up like a queen watching peasants curtsy, went slack in the jaw. And for a second, the whole street held its breath like a choir waiting for the downbeat. We moved into Meadow Ridge because it was pretty and quiet, and looked like the kind of place where kids learn to ride bikes in cul-de-sacs, and old neighbors wave from porches. Not because we love rules about mailbox colors or fines for the angle of your trash can lid. I work from home, which means I hear the neighborhood rhythm. Sprinklers, thumping dogs gossiping through fences, people pretending not to look at each other while looking anyway. 2 weeks after closing 7 a.m. Sharp, the doorbell rang with authority. Clipboard navy blazer perfume that smelled like a department store return counter. "I'm Kayla Sanders, president of the association," she announced, already marching into the script. "You are in violation of 17 community standards. Mailbox color roses light fixtures. Total assessment $3,500. She said it like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat and charging us rent for the rabbit. My wife Julie took it all in with that calm that makes me nervous, because it means she is already 10 moves ahead. "Could you show me exactly which section gives the board authority to impose these specific penalties without a membership vote?" she asked, polite, surgical, not blinking. From our neighbor's stoop, Mrs. Collins whispered across the hedges, "She ruined the Morgans with this they had to sell, then disappeared like a warning swallowed by a door." I muttered, "Tell her who you are," and Julie squeezed my wrist. Not yet. She photographed every page, thanked Kayla for her time, and as soon as the door shut, she spread documents across our kitchen like a map of a city she'd conquered before. "People like her win because regular families get tired," she said, quiet, steady. "Let's find out how heavy the truth really is." By Thursday, the number had somehow grown to 8,000. Late fees, attorney. Consult fees, lean prep, a whole menu of costs cooked up in the back room. Kayla brought a contractor who stared at his boots like they might testify against him, and a letterhead that tried very hard to look official. Julie smiled the way you smile at a toddler holding a toy gavel. "Great," she said. "Let's schedule a formal board meeting open to members 7 days' notice per bylaws." Kayla's smile twitched at the edges. "These matters are typically handled privately," she tried, which is bully code for "please do not bring lights to my shadows." Marco Rodriguez, 3 houses down, called across his lawn. "We didn't vote these new penalties this week. Arms crossed, face honest." The room changed temperature. At the meeting, fluorescent lights, folding chairs, cookies, no one dared touch. Kayla stacked papers like sandbags, while Julie laid out statutes. Due process, the enforcement ladder in the CC, and R's ratification requirements notice rules. 2 board members traded looks that read like, "Oh." Marco raised his hand. No record of a vote, no proper notice. The board suspended pending assessments for review. Julie hadn't flashed a badge. She had just asked the questions anyone could ask if they knew where to point the flashlight. Then the story got darker. A county detective named Morrison showed up with that lien that says I am the consequence you cannot name. "We've received complaints about harassment of community officials," he said, when smooth eyes cold. "Pay the fines, follow the rules, and this stays simple. Keep resisting, and things get complicated." Julie stepped onto the porch like a woman walking into her own courtroom. "Detective, what statute gives your office authority over a civil HOA dispute? And how does requesting documentation constitute harassment? She asked. He smirked. She tilted her head. Are you familiar with civil rights violations under color of law? She added, casual, like coffee. The kind that apply when an officer uses official authority to further a private scheme. The smirk disappeared like a bad magic trick. Later that day, a state investigator returned Julie's call. What you're seeing isn't isolated, he said, words clipped and careful. Manufactured code violations inflated contractor estimates. Intimidation, multiple counties. You know that feeling when your chest sinks and your back straightens at the same time. Yeah. Julie turned our dining room into a war room. Timelines and pencil receipts taped to paper text messages, photographed and filed. Mrs. Collins brought a shoebox of letters with threats underlined in red. Marco slid over bank statements with transfers to shell companies that had no websites and probably no ladders. A midnight text hit my phone. Pay tomorrow or face consequences. And I held it up with shaking hands while Julie snapped the photo. Federal intimidation, thank you, she said, not gloating, just noting another brick in the wall. Independent verification, Kayla chirped on Friday morning, voice syrupy over the phone. A neutral officer will confirm your violations this afternoon. Julie's eyes flickered the way they do when the last piece slides into place. Who is the neutral? She asked, all Sunday manners. Officer Rodriguez, Kayla said, smug, like she'd ordered the cake and the confetti. The neighborhood smelled tension like rain. People drifted to front yards. Mrs. Collins wiped the same planter for 20 minutes. Marco washed his car without moving it an inch. A contractor van idled with 2 men, pretending to be invisible. Julie reviewed the binder one more time, tabs like small flags. If he sees the board, the threat's the timeline, and if he recognizes me, he'll do the right thing, she said, not guessing, remembering. Then the patrol car rolled to the curb. The passenger door opened, and the hook of this story set itself. Wait, Judge, you live here. The air changed when he said it. Morrison took a half-step back like a man who just felt the edge under his heel. Kayla gulped air like it might be refundable. Julie nodded steady. Officer Rodriguez, I request coordination with federal partners. I have evidence of criminal conspiracy mail and wire fraud and civil rights violations under color of law. She handed over the binder, heavy with tabs light with doubt. He flipped pages, radio already in his hand. Dispatch initiate federal contact, he said. And in the time it takes to swallow a fear unmarked, sedans appeared where you'd swear there had been only curb and jackets with 3 familiar letters, walked out of hedges like they were part of the landscaping plan. Ms. Sanders. Special Agent Miller, an agent said. Voice flat, handcuffs ready. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, civil rights violations. Detective Morrison, you are detained for civil rights violations under color of law and conspiracy. Kayla protested. I didn't know she was anyone important, and I almost pitied her for the tiny second it takes to recognize that arrogance looks pathetic when it shrinks in daylight. Neighbors emerged with folders and grief. The Morgans with their engineer report that had been ignored, an elderly couple with letters that had chased them out of their retirement home, a young family with screenshots of messages that said, accidents happen. The street that had been silent became a chorus of voices telling the same story. And if you've never watched fear turn into relief, it looks like shoulders lowering and eyes lifting and hands finally unclenching. The weeks after felt like sweeping up after a storm you didn't see coming. Julie never once held her title over anyone she didn't have to. She coordinated evidence, answered questions, made introductions, then went back to her day job and our life, which now included neighbors waving with something like pride instead of politeness. Marco took interim president and set 2 simple rules. Meetings are open, and no one gets fined by surprise. Mrs. Collins organized a block party and made the kind of potato salad that tells you a neighborhood is going to be okay. 6 months later, we sat on the same porch and read about plea deals and sentencing. Kayla, racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering, civil rights. 18 years restitution, ordered assets seized. Morrison, civil rights under color of law conspiracy. 12 years. A handful of contractors flipped a couple of small officials. Resigned before they could be fired. The county began to ask questions out loud that should have been asked years ago. The roses bloomed the color they wanted. The mailbox stayed black. The sky did its work with light, and the ridge caught it like a blessing. Here is the part that might start a fight in the comments, and maybe it should. Would this have ended differently if Julie weren't a judge? Did the reveal make people listen faster than they would have otherwise? Is that fair, or just the world as it is? The truth is, the case didn't hinge on her title. It hinged on paper and patience and neighbors who kept receipts and said no together. But I won't pretend that the hat coming off and the word judge didn't move the day along. You know what I mean. I used to think justice arrived like cavalry. Banners, sirens, the whole movie shot. But most days, it looks like a woman with a yellow legal pad, asking the right question the right way. A man across the street who decides to stop looking at his boots. A good cop, remembering why he carries a badge at all. If you felt the snap when the officer said, "Judge, you live here. Tell me if that made you cheer, or made you angry, or both." If you have a story where small power got used like a weapon, or where someone used the rules to protect instead of punish, drop it below. Where do you draw the line between community standards and control, between order and intimidation? Hit like if you want more true stories told plain. Subscribe if you think quiet people can flip a script, and tell me in the comments what you would have done when the clipboard knocked at your door.